So, who would like to go first? Who would like to go first? What's the consensus in your groups? Which of those three options will you choose? I'm going to just say it one more time because I know there were different questions from different sides. So the idea is basically to think about which of those three options you prefer. If you now could choose your treatment in the control, which is one group, or the treatment arm. And the idea is trying to think about how you would implement this, right? Like, what are the advantages from one method over the other? What are some of the problems you might run into if you were to execute that? So with that, anyone want to go first? Do you say yes? Or
I said,
you're
I believe everyone knows. I was saying like anyone can answer, so I was doing that.
All right, what were you thinking? Go for it, yeah.
Okay, so should I start with the randomization method?
Yeah.
Okay, so we said we're going to take the names of the kids, like a catalog, then assign a number, like 0, 1, 0, 1. I mean, we're just copying your method.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we're going to use the randomize.org,
Okay.
give like a thing, and then the 0 goes to like the randomized group, the treatment, and then the other is
So assuming that means every student's going to be in the treatment or control. Like,
yes.
if that were the case, which of those three would you
And
would you then have chosen?
In the treatment, we would use the second.
Okay.
The reason is for the first, there is inertia, so people probably will forget. You need to remind them close to the event.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Just like with elections and everything.
Yeah.
The third, probably they're gonna be chatting and nobody is gonna know what's happening back at home. And then the second is the most effective, we think, because it's like right on the right time.
Yeah.
People are not gonna procrastinate so much. With the problem that kids might lose the thing and it never goes home.
Does anyone think there may be another problem, or who else has chosen this method? Yes.
Well, the problem we saw with the second and third option is that you can't control how the information flows between the students.
Okay.
So you get the piece of paper, you see, I think it's very hard to control who saw the video and who didn't.
Yeah.
And the same with the paper. One solution could be is divide students into but I think it's not really realistic, like the ones who were in school on the day when the paper were handed out or when the movie was shown, and the ones who were absent, I don't know, for whatever reason. So then you can kind of, there would be information gap between two of those groups.
Would you think that if you use this method, it might be one way to do it, would you worry about an element about the students who are skipping school or are sick that day? Do you think that would be a problem?
Probably. And probably there would be like a very small portion of them, I would imagine.
Okay, yeah. So maybe there could be a self-selection problem right there, potentially, right? And they may also be the students that are not very likely to show up to flu shots anyway. So that's one way of thinking about that. Any other thoughts?
One concern we had was also, we had centralized morning announcement.
Okay.
But we thought that students must speak with one another. Yeah. So the way we were thinking about doing it is taking all 5 schools and taking all the classes within the 5 schools, and putting them in different categories, like listing them out, and randomly assigning, creating a random generator.
So it would be based on classrooms instead of students, which is a little bit trickier, but in terms of the centralized morning announcement, we wouldn't be able to give it to just individual students.
Okay, so how would you do it with the centralized morning system?
So
it's centralized, I assume, at the school. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's...
So you would have to mute. You would have to ask teachers to mute.
To mute the system.
In rooms, specific rooms.
That's creative. That is not something I thought
I
about.
did have a question though with the centralized morning announcement. How often did we say that it would be played? Is it played during flu shot week? Is it only once?
This announcement?
Yeah.
I left that open, but yeah, presumably it would be played regularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we felt like the immediacy of that would be a lot more if you're able to play it over a course of several days and have it to be very immediate and have it's a lot more action oriented than if you get it in for a slip.
Yeah. So assuming now for a second, if you couldn't turn the system off in a classroom, would that be still the best option, or do you think there are other problems with choosing the one on the right?
I think it's the Asian principle problem here. Okay. The kids are not going to decide if they're going to get a flu shot. It's the parents.
Yeah. Potentially.
But
At what age do you think will it flip?
yeah.
Do you think it's for all ages or?
What kid wants to get a shot?
Yeah.
Not in school.
I mean, yeah, I'm still trying to avoid it. But
I know, right?
I think that's a good point, and one reason why these are not easy trials to run are problems like these, exactly. We're at the moment not focusing on it, but it's certainly something you think about when you choose your method. And this is why we included this one in here, because this one goes to someone else. It's another component to think about. Maybe it is the case that for some schools, for some age groups, you really don't want to target the children. They may be all very effective, but you're right. Maybe it's the parents who make the decision at the end of the day. So that's a good point. Any other thoughts? And then we're going to move on. Yes, please.
Of all of them, that's the only one where the delivery method is outside your control. So people's tone of voice or who's giving the announcement, it's like
Unless you do it.
Pre-recorded.
you could do it, but that actually might be weird. I don't know.
I mean, you could record something and make sure that everybody
That's
gets
true.
the same recording.
That's okay.
Yeah, you guys are great. You're doing a great job at thinking of some of the problems that might arise, some of the advantages. And to be fair, I didn't make it easy. This is a very difficult problem for many reasons. I'm going to give you a quick summary of all the things that you already unpacked, just as a bit of a summary. So this is a good point. Obviously, you are reaching perhaps the parents. It's actually very efficient, a method for randomizing, because you can target all the parents, which means A, one advantage is they're probably going to be some of the people who make the decision. B, that there's not so much spillover, a danger of spillover, which we're going to talk about in a second. So does anyone want to say what spillover, what I mean by that? Have you heard of this term before? Or can you imagine what it might mean?
Well,
Yes.
apparently it's the kids talking to each other, the control group and the treatment group.
And why would that be a problem?
Well, because that's contamination. You give out the info sleep, or some of these kids listen to the morning announcement and then they walk to another class, talk to their friends who did not get the sleep or the announcement.
Right, exactly.
But in this case, the bias would work in your favor. So I mean,
Yeah,
you could always say
that's
that you showed the minimum effect.
Ah,
It might be
exactly. So
big.
that would be one way of thinking about it. Well, even if we have spillover, the idea being that if you're in the control group and the treatment group, kids talk to you, and we still show an effect with our intervention, well, it's a pretty good test, right? Like even when it spills over into the control group, it works. It may though be that you don't have enough students, right? Because you need fairly big samples on that. And it may also be that even though it's a conservative test, sometimes you want to know kind of how effective it is. It would be a shame if you don't get a very good estimate of how big of an effect this might be. But it's a good point. Yeah, it's a conservative test. So these are some of the points that go in here. The spillover is fairly little. You've mentioned it. Spillover seems to be a big problem in here. This one doesn't sound too bad if you think about, say the whole school in the week of the announcement of the flu shots hears the same pre-recorded message about taking a flu shot. That would be a good thing. That would be the kind of thing you hope to do if you had 500 schools. Unfortunately, 5 schools on purpose was chosen because it's a fairly small number. That's not to say it may not work at all, but it's probably going to be too small. So I think with those 3 options, on purpose there's not like one perfect solution, but it hopefully illustrates some of the concepts we're going to talk about when we now think about the... Oh, that's a shame. I actually thought about doing this online. You already are ahead of it. So basically we could have also done a poll on this to see which one you would have chosen. But basically we talked about a lot of different elements in randomization you should think about as you go into the real world. So one of them is individual level randomization. Do you want to go for, say, a letter or an email or something that directly targets one individual? Is that the kind of intervention you want to deliver? And then you want to measure just that individual outcome? Or are you thinking about something at a higher level? And that can be all sorts of different levels. It can be at school levels, like we discussed. It may be in groups, like teams at work. It may be households that you can think of as a unit. Then the parents may be the recipient. But households is actually an interesting example, because there's also some new research on that. So for instance, imagine you had targeted one of the kids in school, let's say this guy, for whatever. The example that is very opposite is actually Todd Rogers' research here at Harvard. He tries to get children to show up to school. And so he has interventions that, for instance, target this kid who may be not showing up to school. So the way he does it, he does actually go through the parents. He sends texts and other ways to communicate with them and tries to get him to show up. That's a target group, but he also measures what the system may be doing. that's a spillover where you actually might care about the spillover in a positive way because you can see it as part of your treatment, but you also want to measure that. Right? So group level outcomes are not that easy. You have to think about who's talking to whom, who could be spilling over into who's out of condition, and if you can anticipate that, make sure that those people don't interact, or if they do, measure it, and make sure that you have a clean control as well. So that's different levels of randomization. There's also different channels of distribution. So some people call them vectors. So one way would be just sending an email, for instance. That's a very direct vector to get to that person. A letter is another one. Websites are also vectors. If you've ever been at a startup, they love A/B testing of their websites, where Facebook does it all the time. Every big company now basically does A/B testing, and they use websites to like try out what works, where the button should be, what kind of messages they should use. A phone call might be also a very direct vector. For instance, voting mobilization often works that way, but there's a lot of cost involved with actually calling people up and trying to get them to do something. Another vector might be actually using the social group around it. So if you know approximately people's social network, you might be able to target one person in there, one leader of a group, for instance, and then hope that it spills over on purpose. That might be the person you want to target, but you measure the whole group, and the vector here is that person that you either put in the treatment or control group. Superiors might be another one, like managers. Another one that I think is probably most famous is actually things like physical spaces, from Cass Sunstein's nudge. This whole idea of choice architecture, that's another way of thinking about how you deliver your treatment. You can design offices differently. You can think about where in the cafeteria you put fruit and things like that. These are all ways to try and get at your treatment and targeting certain groups. But again, they come with advantages and disadvantages because everyone in the cafeteria will be treated if the cafeteria is your whole unit of treatment.